Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play team. This actual play uses the RuneQuest rules by Chaosium Incorporated. This actual play is performed by adults and in an adult setting. Strong language, mature scenes, and rune magics are on the way. As this is our Glorantha, we will remind listeners that it may vary from the one you already know and love. And now, on to the show. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Old Ways Podcast. I am your storyteller this evening, Michael Diamond. My pronouns are he, him, and we're back with 6 Seasons in Sartar, our RuneQuest campaign on the Old Ways Podcast. We want to thank you for joining us for another fun, exciting, perhaps perilous episode. We'll get to character introductions in just a second, but I just want to thank you, the listener, and you, the Patreon supporter, and really anywhere you could support us. So that could be supporting us on YouTube, that could potentially be supporting us on Twitch, or other various outlets as we are. And even if you don't have a single penny you can spare us, that's okay. Because sharing the show with people who might enjoy it is just as effective. And so now we'll get to character introductions. To my right.
Hi, everybody. I'm Heather, otherwise known as Valley Girl Heather. My pronouns are she, her, and I am playing Lysana of Cliffshield, the apprentice healer and midwife of the Haraborn, and follower of the Blessed Earth Mother, Ernalda.
And to Lysana's right.
This is Morgan, and I play Alara of Hillbase Stead. Our pronouns are she, her, and Alara, and probably myself in a different timeline, or this timeline, is a devout cultist of Marangor, who's the goddess of earthquakes and quake beasts. And we both enjoy the connection to the raw power and primal fury of the earth.
At the end of the table.
This is Jake playing Vargast, Initiate of Orlanth and Shah the Rainbow Worm. And we are going to stand against the tyranny of the Lunars today.
Indeed. I'm sure nothing bad will happen at all when you do that. And last, but most certainly not least.
Hi, this is James, and I'll be playing Finn of the River. And did someone mention peril? Hold on, peril?
I did. I mentioned it. Peril. So we are going to part our veil this episode as some time has passed. Just a skosh. Just a little bit of time has passed since a birth from Janira and Dendros as we left that wonderful yet bittersweet scene. And some things have happened. So it has turned over that wonderful calendar. It is now 1620. And so a new year brings all sorts of new potential challenges. So the veil and the people who live within it change footing. That's really the best way to say it. Those people who have not yet fled the veil are tending to steads as best they can. Numbers have definitely dwindled. The cold has begun to fall away. And new life is beginning to grow, which is wonderful. Except that in your head, Vargast, you can't get your father's voice to quiet. You know that when the ice melts, that things will change. And so does he. And so that is why he has prepared the people of the Vale to begin taking regular watch on all of the major spots, one of which being the Vale Gate and the palisade therein. And so it is an opportunity for the four of you in that way, as all of you are able-bodied and all of you have decided to stay, to do that duty, guard watch, and give me a listen roll.
No, that is way over 25, so that is a fail.
Okay. Laura?
Got a 53 over 40.
Okay. Vargast?
I got a 1 under 40.
Okay. Very nice. Finn?
22 under 35.
Okay. So a couple of things. Finn, you hear this far before it ever actually arrives at the Vale, and that is something is moving through the trees and up towards the Vale. Vargast, your critical gives you a lot of different additional information. Whatever is moving towards the Vale has many feet. It carries many pieces of equipment. There are likely horses. And it is coming at a fairly steady pace. You see it about a minute or so after that. Along the road to Blackstag Vale, winding through the tree lining, which narrows, you see an army. And as it approaches, it does not come under the banner of the Lunar Empire. It flies the colors of the Colymar. And near its lead, you see a barrel-chested, broad-shouldered man with a very bushy and thick black beard. He's wearing armor adorned for his position. He's something to behold. And even though you've never seen him before, the king of the Colymar is hard to miss. It also means the Vale must be woke. People need to know an army is coming. To his right, a ruddy brown, perhaps reddish mare carries a red-robed lunar priestess. Marching behind these two are men armed and dressed for war. Sartarites. Colymar.
Traitors.
The far side of the palisade notices this. Probably about 30 seconds after you do. They grab a horn and they blow as hard as they possibly can. There are those of you who are decent riders here, yeah? Somebody with a 40% or more ride would probably be very eagerly grabbing a horse and going up. If none of you are that good of a rider, a member of the Vale will grab a horse and hustle up the mountain.
Not I.
So the benefit of the Vale is this. You see this long train of people coming far before they will ever actually get to the palisade wall or the doors. The downside is that you get to see the depth and breadth of how many people are coming. And that is very concerning. I'd like to know, what are the four of you talking about?
Seeing so many of men who we thought were our people turning against who we are, turning against all that we believe in to fight for the Lunars is almost the ultimate betrayal.
I'd wager if each one of them grabbed a handful of hill-based stead and walked away with it, it would be flat and dry as a field by the time they were gone. I don't think I've ever seen that many men in one place, let alone moving like that.
How could we just let them do this? They're destroying everything. How are our people going to survive for this?
I'm less worried about them taking our food and more worried about taking the few remaining warriors we have in the village. So, you got any good news for us, Vargast?
There'll be plenty of opportunities for glory.
Oh, well, I mean, there is that. Well, Orlanth loves glory, from what I understand.
Well, I mean, they are coming for our heads, so we have no choice.
Oh, let them come. I'll show them a quake beast they haven't seen yet.
Well, if they must come, let them come, for the earth will swallow them whole. Ernalda herself will rise up. They will not succeed. They will not get far, and they will pay for what they are doing.
Actually, at this point, I just want to see Alara on the field, truth be told, if we're all going to lose our heads. So they are coming for us then. That serpent of men there.
Yeah, they're coming for us. Not even Lunars. Our own people.
Everything, nothing, and even less. In that order. He chops off a small tankard.
They will come, they will kill us, and they will take everything of worth.
Let's make them earn it, shall we? Mike, Finn is going to scrounge up an actual weapon other than his sling, because while that's good, it's a sling. So some sort of, if he can find a broadsword of some sort amongst one of the houses, or he'll grab it and the scabbard.
Yeah, certainly you'd be able to acquire, by now, you would be able to acquire a blade. If nothing else, perhaps it's a family sword that likely not very often used, but kept because it was at one point used.
My grandmother did die in a rather fortuitous battle, so
certainly
perhaps it's her sword.
I think that's a wonderful idea. Let's make it her sword.
Okay. He takes her sword out of an old trunk in the attic and oils it up. Dad, I'm borrowing the sword.
Yeah, I don't think your dad protests by any means. He probably says something like, "Don't get yourself killed."
Do my best.
So a little time passes, and mostly the group at the palisade can only sit and watch. An army of men moves awful slow, usually, especially uphill. And while you have some, quote, tactical advantage by being on higher ground, you are woefully outnumbered. There are maybe 10 Haraborn that watch the palisade wall. If they decide to charge and fight, it will end very badly. About an hour passes in total before the rider returns. And when the rider returns, he returns with your father, Jorganath, and an honor guard, essentially, of weapon thanes. Professional soldiers who are, in effect, masters of a variety of weapons that the Haraborn would use. King Kangharl waits outside the gate. After your father arrives, he tells them to open the gate. And Kangharl and this lunar priestess move their horses forward. Just those two. There are words spoken which you've not heard often here. But there will be a parley of sorts, a discussion about how things are going to be handled. The red woman's head is shaven completely. It's covered with an intricate network of runic tattoos encircling a moon rune at the very top of her skull. She wears a hood over most of it, but you catch sight of it as the winds whip back and forth. Her arms have these intricate markings on them. The best analog for us is henna in the way that they appear, but they are exquisitely done. Her feet are bare. You can see that she has rings on her toes and bells on her ankles. And when she passes through the gate, you smell Jasmine come with her. Your father greets the king, but just briefly. They adjourn. I think that's the best word for it. They adjourn to a nearby longhouse. Do any of you choose to accompany Gordangar?
So Lysana will follow to the point where they go inside the door, but will not go in herself. She will just stand kind of just outside of the door off to the side and lean against so that she can hear in, but will not go completely in to the longhouse.
I'll go with, my place is with my father.
Finn will go with too, because knowing as much as he can is Finn's MO. And the only way to know as much as he can in this case is to sit in the room and listen.
I will wait at the gate.
Okay. So for the remainder of this portion of it, we'll say that Vargast and Finn are present, and Lysana may overhear certain things as they're discussed, but she will not see things as they happen. Your father greets his liege lord very stiffly. You see him offer King Harl a drink, which the king refuses. They get down to business rather quickly. The king says, for the crimes against the throne in Clearwine and the prince in Sartar in Boldholm and the breaking of the peace with the Lunar allies, Black Stag Vale will be taken from you. It has been known for some time that you have been supporting the Deer Folk and their raising of rebellious arms against the Lunars, which only continue to raise problems for our people. But far more than that, you have been lying to me. You have been lying about the number of people here. Our scouts managed to catch several of them as they were leaving. I'm sure many, many more survived. I have 250 men at the gate, he says, which cuts you in half, Vargast. It's way more than you're prepared to even fight. You swore oaths to Clearwine. You have violated those oaths. But I ask you to let there be peace. As a sign of mercy, I will spare your lives. Instead, men here, the women, any of the children who may still exist in Cotter's cabins or places you've hidden them from us, will surrender their freedom, and they'll be sold in Boldholm, New Pavis, and the Grantlands along the River of Cradles as slaves. But they will live. Your father shakes his head. I made no oaths to you. But Lethia Blackspear was my queen. You are not half the man she was. King Harl stiffens a bit. Then, at dawn tomorrow, there will be war. Your women and children, of course, will still be sold as slaves. Your cattle and property will be confiscated. But the men of the Vale will go to feed the Crimson Bat. The woman, who stayed silent up until now, looks over to you, Vargast. And then to you, Finn. Why are these people here? Your father doesn't honor her with any sort of a look. He holds King Harl's gaze and says, they are here because I wish them to be here. These are my lands. The red woman smiles at you, Vargast, and she says, you were the ones with Starbrow. What makes you so special, I wonder? You get the intense feeling, Vargast, that she's staring at your hand. You can even feel the Dragonute rune almost itch a little. Very well. Come, my king. These people can, well, they can rest and wait.
Your Majesty, Your Highness, before you go, as you walk amongst your men, why don't you pick a few of them? Tell them to tell their families goodbye. And you yourself should probably write a letter to your kin. We'll see you tomorrow. You should get going.
He turns. He doesn't reply to you. He turns and walks out the door. The room empties. Lysana, you see the Lunar priestess and Kangharl leave. They get back on their horses. They are allowed to leave the palisade gate, as would be very dishonorable to attack them under the rules of war. So yeah, they leave. In the hours that come afterwards, the men, the small, I should say, quote, small group of maybe 50 or 60 men who came to the gate, they pull back a little bit, out of bow range for sure. And they make camp. Your father calls all willing participants to the inner ring that night. And the four of you are invited to the hall. And so when you get to the hall, there is we'll just say a slight surprise for you. So you see two people who you know fairly readily. One of them is the Vinging warrior, Gorvara, whom you interacted with when you were working with the Deerfolk. The other one is Colymar, your uncle, who is in the hall when you arrive. Although he does not seem as festive as he once did. He is all business at this point.
So on seeing my uncle, I kind of break away and go over to him. I'm pretty sure we just kind of look at each other without really having to say much of anything, and I give him the biggest, tightest hug, trying to pour as much of whatever I can into him for him to survive, and let him know that I love him, and no matter what happens, he will always be with me. And I was always grateful for him to be there in my life.
Certainly, he embraces you passionately, as he has had on several occasions before. He shares his love with you in that way, as family members do. But you can tell that he is, even in his own way, a bit reserved, as he is deeply concerned with what's going on in the Vale. There are others who come to the Vale too. Men who lead steads, women who have prominent roles within the riddle and other spaces. All of the inner ring is here. And after your father has a healthy drink from his tankard, he says, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, my blood, my kin. 5 centuries ago, our ancestors were a people besieged. Like man standing on a hillock, watching floodwaters rise all around him. They saw everything around them drowned in the lies and poisons of the worm's friends. They watched the old ways die. They could not fight this flood. They could not hold it back. If they stayed, they would drown too. So it was that Taragor, son of Crossnor, stood here amongst them and said this: "It is time for us to leave. It is time for us to leave." A lot of really immediate murmurs after this go through the crowd. There are gasps. Nobody directly protests, which is a little surprising, as Sartarites usually are pretty fiery. But it seems, at least to many of you, that perhaps word has gotten to the other steads that there is an army at the gate, and one which, even as talented as the weapon thanes here are, they likely cannot fend off. Some of our forefathers went and fought at Grizzly Peak. Many of us were at Boldholm. Many here do not have fathers because they fell half a dozen years ago trying to win back our freedom. Today I was told by a man who calls himself my king that I was to surrender all of you into bondage. That I was to give our women and our children to others as slaves. Our land and property was forfeit, but that we could still have our lives. And to that, I say this: no one can make us do anything. You see the people around shout. There are a few cheers that go up. There is always another way. You hear Morganath's voice peek over the crowd in that very common Ernaldan saying. And Gordankor nods at her. And even though she is blind, they are looking at one another. Your father pulls his sword from its sheath, and he points it at the rafters and says, "Yes, violence is always an option." And the people here go crazy. They pound on the table. They pound on their shields with weapons. There's hoots and hollers that go throughout the Vale. They probably hear them at the gate. After the crowd dies down a little bit, your father comes to the center where many of the most important of the inner ring and you are enjoying the space. All fjords will assemble at Red Rock tomorrow before dawn. As many of you know, Red Rock is the narrowest portion of the Vale. There, the mountains on either side are steep cliffs. It is the easiest place to hold off a larger force. Tonight, the rest of the women and children will gather as everything that they can. And any man or able-bodied woman willing will hold back Kangharl as long as possible to cover their retreat. The deer folk have gathered and are going to help people get away. But for now, drink as deeply as you can, gather as much strength as you can, because I will not give up this land without blood as its cost.
We should destroy everything in the Vale.
Your father nods. Certainly.
I concur, Vargast, but perhaps there's another way to destroy things than just, wanton destruction. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am a huge fan of wanton destruction. But, they did say they were going to take everything from us. Maybe we give them gifts. There's a lot of flavorless things you can put in wine and mead. Things that'll make a man sleepy on the battlefield. Or make him see double. Or triple. Or shit his pants.
Maybe. And maybe that works, but it cannot hurt. Not at this point. The crowd, over the next few minutes or so, begins to disperse as everyone has work to do. But Gorvara and Colymar stay back. So do the weapon thanes. Kalira has dispatched what deerfolk warbands she can. It's my understanding it's about 80 men, and your uncle nods. Maybe 90, depending upon who we can get here in time. Their plan is to attack Kangharl from the rear. They'll sweep down from Cragradius and Kivin. Your uncle, in sort of the starkest terms, says, I do not expect to win, but that Colymar will bleed for what it has chosen to do. And maybe that will be enough. And then a voice appears again above all of the male voices, a feminine one, an older one our Arnaldan priestess probably knows very well. What of the riddle? Morgana says from a chair. What of Stag Hill? Are holy places just to be abandoned, desecrated? What of the Royals' Grove? If they capture and destroy the Wider, there will be no clan to preserve, whether we live or not.
I don't understand. How can we just walk away from the riddle? How can we let them potentially desecrate the legacy, the power, everything that is there with our ancestors? I don't understand. There's got to be a way.
I worry that no one of us would be able to do such a task. The Wider is a living being. It is, as a spirit, is attached to the community. It speaks directly through Gordangar as the chieftain. Your father nods fairly grimly to Morgana. I do not yield the riddle nor the hill lightly, my priestess. I do not yield the generations of our ancestors who went there with a light heart. But there is nothing I can do in this regard. Unless there is another way.
No, there has to be a way. There has to be something, some type of magic. There has got to be a different solution to this. Whether... Can Arnalda guide me? There has to be something that can be done.
Jake, you feel your arm vibrate.
The one with the mark?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have something to add?
A kaleidoscopic light comes out of your palm, and Shah, the rainbow worm, becomes visible. It uncoils from your body and hangs in the air. It speaks to those who are present. All of you can hear it. All of you can see it. Before I do that, though, I'm going to spend 3 MP for you, Vargast.
The hidden, the secret,
its voice says.
This I can do. Take me to your sacred spaces, and I will hide them from prying eyes. And so, when you return to your veil, they will be just as you've left them.
Can you do this? Is this possible? Because if it is, please, implore you, please save these areas, these most sacred of sites.
I like that plan.
Gordangar and Morgana don't seem to have any true opposition to the idea.
Then I must move quickly.
And so you do. you move to the Riddle and to Stag Hill. And it's almost as if the wider Shah colors the air for a moment. And just as you've seen so many times at the temple, they fade from existence. It's as if the Riddle and its very square doorway no longer exists. The same is true of Stag Hill and the Standing Stones. They fade as well.
Before me, the legacy of our people back to the line. Walk through here, and it will never be the same. We will never be the same. But I guess this must be done. Please, Arnalda, watch over this land. Please, allow us to come back one day and reclaim it, protect it, as you protect all of those sacred sites and people around.
When you return, just before it gets too late, Draganath Bladesong, your father's weapon thane, the Humakti, gathers you all. And just outside the doorway, you see your father looking in on the four of you with his weapon thane. And in the corner, Keldon Blue Eye smokes a pipe and grins. You can only see half of his face. He's almost terrifying. It's as if he knows something about what's going to happen, but he hasn't told anyone yet. Your father comes over and says, "None of you will be participating in the battle tomorrow."
What?
What?
Oh, good. I mean, what?
Father, I belong with you.
Did I stutter? None of you, because I have something specific you must accomplish for me. It is of genuine importance. The Haraborn are not just living and breathing men and women. A clan is so much more than this. We are also the ancestors that came and went before us. We are our history, our memories. We are the land. Above all, we are the wider, the spirit of community that binds us together as a people. Our enemy must kill that to kill us. If it survives, no matter how many of us die, the clan lives. You will go to the grove and to the Widerling Oak. You will destroy the tree and free the spirit.
I see.
So out of character, something is really important here for all of you to understand. What Gordangar is telling you to do is blasphemy. Flat out.
He's basically telling us to kill the heart of the stead.
Yes, he's telling you to release the wider from the oak where it lives. Although those of you who are a little bit more, we'll just say pragmatic in your thinking, might see what he's getting at, which is if they kill it and they kill the people, then we really are all gone. And so this is actually sort of a surprisingly pragmatic thought for someone like Gordangar. It's likely, Finn, that you don't think the thought originated within his brain.
This showing an uncommon amount of mental flexibility.
Right.
Finn actually throws kind of a sly side eye over at Blue Eye.
He looks like he has a murderous intent.
Finn actually goes directly over to Blue Eye after all is said and done.
Mm-hmm.
I know the smell of pipe smoke. Gordangar smelled of pipe smoke, and he just taps Blue Eye's pipe and meets his gaze. But it's a solid plan.
Your mentor of sorts doesn't really say anything. He seems very focused on a space that no one in the room is standing in, as if he's looking into the middle of nowhere.
Looking at one of those 3D eye spectrogram pictures. He's got the 100-yard stare.
Basically. I know that it is hard to understand, Gordengar says. The dragons, the people of the seven-tailed wolf, none of our enemies dared threaten the Wider. The Black Stag is threatened by the Lunars. They have fundamentally chosen a path of destruction, no matter how much they wish to wrap it in something else. With axe, lightning, however you do, split the tree. The royal will be with you, and he will take the spirit of the Black Stag within him. This time, when we go, the Wider comes with us.
I will do as you command, Father.
He puts his hand on your shoulder, Vargast, and says, "You have been a dutiful son. I have raised you as best I could. It will be time soon for you to chart your own path, away from this veil. But the veil will never leave you." And without a word, he leaves. As does Caladan Blue-Eye, as does Savan, and the rest of the ring. They leave the four of you in the hall with nothing but the fire crackling behind you.
Take a deep breath. There's no use in delaying. We need to go.
The gods are precocious. We'll see how it turns out. Our hands have not yet split the tree or released the Wider. We'll see what they got our hands to actually do.
Well, better us than the dirty Lunars.
So, no one sleeps very well. The veil is fairly restless. That is easy enough to tell. Everyone knows what is going to happen tomorrow. At least they know the preamble. It's likely the book is yet unwritten, although the memories and dreams and minds of the Haraborn seek to write it before it has happened. In many different ways. Certainly there among the Veil here, there are many who believe that the Haraborn can find a way to win. But that is something that is yet to be seen. The group heads up. You know how to get to where you're going. The Royal and that space have always been a place where few have ventured, but many have often looked. It sits high above the space in the Vale. A place with trees older than you can imagine. Stones that have been there for countless years. That is where the Royal makes its home. And you know that at its core, there is an enormous oak tree. One larger than any you've seen, dominates the landscape in that way. I wonder what will happen. I certainly look forward to finding out. So we'll end our episode here as another battle awaits. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. It's not over yet. Thank you and good night.